Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night, Namajunas V Cortez. This episode is 20 years late, but we move on. Let's start with the first honorable mention. First things first, there's no robberies, so that's fine. There were some close calls, but we'll get into that later. We go to the first honorable mention of the night. It's Fremd versus Petroski. It's not really an honorable mention because all three judges really had it exactly the same. All 30-27 for Petroski. I just wanted to highlight how boring the fight was, really. Petroski in the first round had a takedown with some ground and pound for 3+ minutes. I mean, there was portions in this fight where Petroski was allergic to ground and pound and then finally decided to strike. But because of Fremd's lack of offense on the bottom, this wasn't that hard to score. In the second round, pretty much the same thing, relatively the same thing. Petroski had a takedown with the submission attempt, and Fremd was slightly active on the bottom. I mean, Petroski had almost little to no ground and pound in this round. He just stayed on top of Fremd for the entire round. You go to the third round, Petroski had a takedown with some ground and pound for 3+ minutes. Again, Fremd was slightly active on the bottom, but this was a very just boring fight. That's what I wanted to highlight. Then we go to the next honorable mention. Watching this live, Van was up 2-0. Looking at the scorecards, the judges were fucking confused. I was amazed at why the scorecards looked like this. I'm talking about Van versus Johnson. Okay, this fight ended in a KO win for Johnson in the third round. I give the first 2 rounds to Van. That was pretty clear, very clear. First round, it was close on strikes with the edge to Van. Van was getting outstruck in the first part of this round, and then slowly made his way back to outstriking Johnson barely, but outstruck him towards the end, and he had the much more heavier strikes. You go to the second round where Van outstruck Johnson by about 8 strikes. I mean, this was pretty evident. Again, this round was still kind of back and forth, but Van outstruck Johnson in this round by about 8 strikes. He outstruck him fairly well in this round. And then the KO happens in the third round. Going off the judges' scorecards, there is a chance that this could have been a split decision depending on who won that last round. Now, I'm not going to make a guess, but let's just say Johnson wins the last round. I don't think he wins this fight. But we look at the judges' scorecards, and they're kind of all over the place. Let's go to the first one. So Mark Sanchez, that's hilarious, gives the first 2 rounds to Johnson. Honorable mention to Mark Sanchez. Let's hope it's not the Jets' Mark Sanchez, because this is a god-awful scorecard. Very, very fucking bad scorecard. Then we go to Chris Lee. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. He gives the first round to Van, and then he gives the second round to Johnson. If we're going to make an argument here, the second round is the strongest round for Van, yet he gives it to Johnson. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. And then Dean Abeta, he has the only correct scorecard. He gives the first 2 rounds to Van, and that's where you have it. This would have been a mess if there was not a finish at the end here. You go to the next honorable mention, and that's Bonfim versus Losa. I had this 29-28. Okay, I had this 29-28 for Bonfim. The last 2 rounds I gave to Bonfim, 10-9, 10-9 the last 2 rounds. First round for Losa, that's very clear. In the first round, it's close on the feet with the edge to Losa in terms of strikes, right? It's close on the feet. Losa's slightly being outstruck on the feet, but he gets 3 takedowns, and I believe with one of them he lands enough ground and pound to really win this round. Granted, when you compile all the strikes, he still has 3 takedowns. It's his round. It's a weird, wonky round because the 3 takedowns take place and kind of far apart from each other. So there's that. You go to the second round. Losa had a takedown. That didn't matter. He did nothing with it. Bonfim had a takedown, and he outstruck Losa on the feet by about 15+ strikes. This was his round for sure. Third round, Bonfim outstruck Losa by about 35+ strikes. I mean, this round was weird. Essentially, the first 2 rounds were different, and then the third round was Losa, moving his head isn't even the right adjective. He just kept getting punched in the head. I think that's just the right. There's no other way to line it up. He just kept getting punched in the head, and he lost this round by 35 plus strikes. I'm not kidding you. You go to the judges' scorecards. Saul D'Amato, his scorecard does not reflect mine. His scorecard is 30-27. He gives the first round to Bonfim. Honorable mention. That's just nonsense. Same with Mark Sanchez. His scorecard reflects Saul D'Amato. Honorable mention. And then Dean Abeta is the only correct one. He gives the first round to Losa. That's correct. In the last 2 rounds to Bonfim. So that's where you have it on that one. You go to the next honorable mention. Okay, you go to the next honorable mention. And this is the fight that was almost a robbery. It's Ponzanibbio versus Salikov. I just didn't like the way the commentary was talking about this fight. And by commentary, I mean Brendan Fitzgerald, who I don't like his commentary. So throughout portions of this fight, he's making, and to be fair to Brendan Fitzgerald, he's looking at the strike numbers. The strike numbers are wrong. They're just absolutely wrong. Many fights, they just keep being wrong. In the first round, they overestimate the amount of strikes that Salikov had, and then they do the same thing in the second round, but this time to Ponzinibbio. It's the weirdest thing ever, and I think the reason for that is, I don't know the reason for that. I think the reason why then Fitzgerald says at the end of round 2, once Ponzanibbio gets his takedown, is that, okay, that might be enough to win the round. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have been enough to win the round. It wasn't enough to win the round. In fact, he did nothing with that takedown. We'll get to it right now. So, 30-27 Salikov. You can maybe argue a 29-28 for Salikov. I didn't, but you can maybe make an argument. So I'll be fair here when I see one. First round, Salikov outstruck Ponzanibbio by 2 strikes. He's bleeding in the first round, but that's irrelevant. He outstrikes Ponzanibbio by about 2 strikes. He wins that round, in my opinion. He outstrikes him well. Okay? A lot of missed strikes, a lot of strikes that just hit, the chest from both of those guys, by the way. So maybe that's where the elevated strike numbers come from, but they shouldn't. He outstrikes him by 2 strikes. There. You go to the second round, Salikov outstrikes Ponzanibbio again, this time by 7 strikes. And Ponzinibbio has a takedown to close out the round. He has a takedown to close out the round, but he's getting outstruck on the feet throughout the duration of the second round. He gets outstruck on the feet. He takes him down. Ponzinibbio takes down Salikov and proceeds to do nothing. He just holds him there to run out the time. But while that time's being ran out, Salikov is hitting Ponzinibbio's face. Again, these aren't hard, heavy strikes, but Salikov is the only one doing something while he's on the ground. So there you have it. You go to the third round. It's close on the feet. Ponzinibbio has a takedown. And Salikov is the only active one. Ponzinibbio, again, just once he gets his takedown, he does nothing. He absolutely does nothing with the takedown. He's literally just holding Salikov there. And and Salikov is the only one being active on the bottom. Hence why I gave the third round to Salikov. But you can maybe make an argument that it's close on strikes. But if you tally up the total strike numbers in round 3, Salikov outstrikes Ponzinibbio. So there you have it. That's where you get my 30-27. You go to the judges' scorecards. And they're just ridiculous. It shouldn't be a split decision, and it's insane. Chris Lee, he gives the first 2 rounds to Salikov, last round to Ponzinibbio. I won't be mad at it, but I disagree with that last round. Eric Colon, he gives the first 2 rounds to Ponzinibbio. This is disgusting and insane. It's ridiculous. Honorable mention to Eric Colon. That's just a terrible scorecard. He gives the last round to Salikov. That's fine. I agree with that, but we move on. And then Dean Abeta, he gives the first 2 rounds to Salikov, last round to Ponzanibbio. There you have it. It's the bad scorecard is Eric Colon. It's wild. Then you go to the last honorable mention, and that's Namajunas versus Cortez. Pretty fun fight. Pretty nice fight. First round, I had a 49-46 for Namajunas. All first 4 rounds for Namajunas, last round for Cortez. First round, Namajunas dropped and outstruck Cortez by about 14 strikes. Second round, Cortez had a takedown, did nothing with it. Namajunas also had a takedown and outstruck Cortez by about 7 strikes. Third round, Namajunas had 2 takedowns with some ground and pound for 3+ minutes. Fourth round, Namajunas also had a takedown and outstruck Cortez by about 4 strikes. And then the fifth round, Cortez, and this is the funny thing, Cortez outstruck Namajunas by about 6 strikes. Pretty much, Namajunas just took the round off, really. This was wild to hear. 48-47 was ridiculous to hear. So we're going to go through it, I guess. Saw the amount he has this correct scorecard. His scorecard reflects mine, 49-46. Chris Lee, scorecard reflects mine, 49-46. And then Eric Colon just decides, fuck it, let's just give a round to Cortez for no good reason. And the round he gives her is round 4. Namajunas got a takedown and outstruck Cortez by about 4 strikes. I'm lost and confused. Honorable mention to Eric Klein. It's just a bad scorecard. He gives the 4th round to Tracy Cortez, and his scorecard reads 48-47. Ridiculous. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Regular fight night. It was fun at certain moments. The Dober fight versus Silva was fun. The Alhassan Brundage fight was fun for a while it lasted, and the Johnson knockout on Van was pretty cool as well too. Also, Jackson versus Blackshear. Jackson is amazing, but I there was one thing I didn't like though. I didn't like, Jackson, excuse me. If you watch enough of these fights, you know that Jackson is Montel Jackson is a very quiet guy, very reserved guy. And he did the post-fight interview, and they're like, "Hey, you must have a name. You must have a name." And he's just like, "No, whoever they give me, I just want a ranking, whatever." Cool. Fitzgerald seems to another reason why I don't like Brendan Fitzgerald. He spills the beans. Now, granted, whether that's his job or not is irrelevant, but he spills the beans on who Montel Jackson possibly wants to face. And the reason why I feel that way is he basically spills the beans of the pre-fight meeting, pre-fight talk that they have with the fighters, where Montel possibly might have slipped through Rob Font's name. And I don't like when we as the fans know that, because I'm sure a lot of these up-and-coming fighters have names that they want to face. But it's not out of, I want to face you because I think you're a really good fighter. My theory is the reason why people call out, for example, if someone right now were to call out Tony Ferguson, that's not out of, I think Tony Ferguson is at the top level of his game right now, and it would be a hard test. No, they see holes in his game. The reason why someone would want to call out Rob Font is because Rob Font is very chinny, and so that would be the perfect moment to call out Rob Font. But he didn't say anything when he was in the octagon. Instead, Fitzgerald kind of blows the load and just tells the audience, and I'm just thinking to myself, God, I wish that was kind of kept in the background. I wish they didn't bring that up, but they did, and it is what it is. That's all I have. Thank you all for listening, and hopefully the next episode comes out soon. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.